Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome on Learn Grasshopper Live. And we are continuing our series about Rhino inside Revit. It's a fourth series episodes from this series. So many Revit users are together with us. And today we have one of the best experts that I've been following. I'm following Ismael newsletter for some time, and he's doing a great job promoting work with Grasshopper, Rhino, and Revit. So, hello, Ismael. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello. How are you doing?
Yeah. And are you still in Bahamas?
Yeah, I'm in Bahamas. I relocated last month, so it's been a month already here. Very happy.
And for those, Ismael is not on vacation. He's working on Bahamas every single day from the last month. Are you feeling as on vacations, or you are feeling like a work mode?
A little bit of both. I mean, with this weather and the beach and the sea is kind of feels like holiday all the time. Yeah, but at the same time, I'm having like a lot of work lately, so I would say it's a little bit of a nice mixture.
Cool. Cool. So we will start in just 2 minutes. If just let us know if you can already hear us, if you can hear us well. So please let us know in the chat if you can hear and see the screen. We'll start in just 2 minutes. So just prepare yourself. Go to toilet before. Take some water, tea, coffee, and we will start shortly. So please make some comments. And as always, we are always on these episodes. We are asking, do you know and use Rhino inside Revit already? Please let us know if you can hear us and see us. And also, what is your Grasshopper, Rhino, and Revit level? Maybe you are just first here. What is Rhino inside Revit? Maybe you are expert. So please let us know in the comments here what is your knowledge about it. We have Gerald, Isma, Chris, great to see you good folks, loud and clear hearing you. So we have Andrea 8. So this is a really good knowledge of Rhino inside. We have some Mariana 2. We have Sam with 1. So yeah, so we have some beginners here, Ismail. So try to keep it really in the basic level. Gerald says that is a 8. So cool to see also expert, but I think that experts also will learn something from you from this presentation, right, Ismail?
I hope so. Maybe you never know, right? You
Yeah.
always can. You can always learn from everybody. I mean, I've been using Grasshopper for like 15 years, and every time, I like to see how other people work using Grasshopper, because even if they don't have as much experience or they are just starting, everybody has like a different process, right? And the way you use the components and the way you create your scripts, they are always different from everybody else. So yeah, I would say that there are some chances that even if you're very advanced, like you have an 8 or a 10, you could
Mhm.
learn something, of course.
Yeah, and definitely, I was working alone with Grasshopper for a couple of years, and suddenly I've been on the hackathon and just discovered the new ways of working, and it was something amazing. So I hope that this session will work the same for you, so you will learn something new. We have some number 4, 7, Paolo. We have Gerald, so we have some fun of you, Ismail. I follow your newsletter, Isma, so I know this is absolutely worth it. So even without seeing the content, so people already are seeing. Okay, we have some number 7s. Cool. Let's start. We have already 2 p.m. Central European time in Bahamas. What time do we have in Bahamas right now?
So 8 a.m. in the
8
morning.
a.m. Okay. It's not that bad. Okay, so we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you are watching on one of these streams, please give a like. So it will help us to spread the knowledge about Rhino inside Revit. So today's session, it will be 90 minutes. We'll see. Isma prepared content for 1 hour. and there will be Q&A session at the end. So everything, it will depend how long this event will be from your question, how many questions there will be. And we are trying to answer all of your questions if, of course, we are able to do that. Ismael is going to also share Grasshopper script that is going to present for us today, and some PDF from the presentation. There will be some theory introduction. So if you are going to scan this code or go to learngrasshopper.com/Revit-Rhinoceros, so you will receive all the files and the link to recording tomorrow with email. So if you are watching that, this session is recorded, and you are going to get the recording tomorrow morning. Okay, so just 2 words about me. My name is Chris. I'm an educator, online educator. I'm trying to teach engineers and architects new ways of designing, especially programming and transforming their work into fun with Grasshopper, with Python and C#. I have my YouTube channel. I have my educational platform and yeah, I transformed from being engineer for 10 years. Now I'm 100% a YouTuber and blogger. So that's a fun. And one of my tasks is to do these webinars and invite some experts from the different parts of the world. We started in December Rhino inside the Revit series. So we are showing how to use Grasshopper inside Revit. If you find Dynamo slow, so Grasshopper is a great alternative. So we started with direct shapes with Jacqueline. This session is still available to watch and download materials. Second session was in January, where I invited Jeffy Walton, who worked for McNeil and is one of those who are sitting behind all the Rhino inside. So the great session about controlling advanced Revit families through Grasshopper. We had another session about structure design for architects and engineers. Great session with Jungfu and Ching. They shared their experience how to transform Revit model into analytical model. And today, as I already told you, we have Ismael. Ismael is a computational designer lead and work in the company called UBM. Is it UBM? How is it called, Ismael? Sorry, you're muted. Let me see. I think you're muted, Ismael.
Oh, sorry, OBMI. That's the name of the
OBMI. Yeah, OBMI. So how long have you been working in the OBMI?
Around 1.5 years now. Yeah.
And you're working mostly with Rhino inside Grasshopper, or what are your main tools that you are using at your company?
So we develop almost everything using Revit, but for design we like Rhino. So that's why we are further and further developing our own workflows to work together with Revit and Rhino, and we use a lot Rhino inside. Yeah, we are doing a lot of like complex geometry. We do like very special type of architecture, not like the typical contemporary. It's more a mix in between vernacular and contemporary. So the type of shapes that we create are quite special, and it's challenging to when you have to work with Revit to create those type of shapes. So yeah, we are lately working quite a lot with Rhino inside.
Cool. And we try to select one typical topic for this session. So we decided to go for the workflow, how to take geometry, how to take data from Revit and put that in RHINOCEROS. So Ismael, we can see your presentation right now. So yeah, so you can start it, and yeah, let's talk about what are the best practices for distributing, for exchanging data from Revit to Rhino.
Yeah, of course. Let's go. So let's start just a little bit with myself as well, so I can introduce myself. So my name is Isma. I'm Spanish architect. I study architecture in Spain. I've been traveling around the world. I've been living in so many countries. I lived in Mexico, in India, in China, in Hong Kong, the US. Now I'm in Bahamas.
That's
so
crazy.
I mean, like,
That's really
yeah,
crazy. That's really crazy. You're supposed to have a newsletter about just traveling.
maybe I can create another one. And I've been, since I started in uni, I was always passionate about parametric design. I always thought that if I didn't study architecture, I would have studied computer science, because this is the part of architecture that I like the most, creating algorithms and automation for design. So I basically started to like develop my skills while I was working more and more and more into Grasshopper. I learned how to do programming, and then I've been working in so many different places, architectural practices. I work for a startup developing digital twin. I work for a big engineering company for some years as well, working in very, very cool projects. Now I'm working in we are doing basically like high-end hospitality and residential in all over the world. And yeah, this is basically me. As I was saying, I'm an architect, but half like my heart is half computer science. That's why I created some months ago a newsletter as well. It's called Parametric Project. It's a newsletter I create. It's a weekly newsletter where I just write different posts about computational design, work stories. They're like short, fun posts, tips, things like that, so that I can start to create a little bit of a conversation around parametric design from my own perspective, right? And I'm enjoying it like so very much. So yeah, thanks for
And
the
I'm really recommending. Ismael has really good sense of humor, so it's not just the boring emails. There's lots of fun also there in your post and newsletter. So I really recommend that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. So yeah, so for today, this is gonna be the agenda. I'm gonna go through the different items. The first one is gonna be an introduction about the file that I'm gonna use, a little bit about what is the difference between BIM and CAD, right? At least from geometry perspective. And then we're gonna go step by step doing different things to get information from Revit into Rhino, right? Query components first. Then we're going to extract just one element from Rhino, put it into Revit, and then we're going to see how we can inspect that specific element that we are going to be extracting. Then if you want to extract like multiple elements, how do you do that? And then if you have like a linked file, like a linked Revit file, how can you extract information from that specific link? Because it's a little bit of a different workflow. And then we are going to create our own mini workflow to extract the geometry from an element and put it in a specific layer. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. Right, so as we were saying before, this webinar is specifically about how to get information, not only geometry, right, from Revit into Rhino. That's going to be like the main topic. I'm going to be using this file. If you have like Revit 2025, I think by default the architectural sample file is different than this. It's a little bit more complicated, and I don't like it that much, especially for this type of examples and showing others how to do whatever thing you want to do with Rhino inside and Revit. So I'm using one that is called architectural Revit sample. If you Google architectural Revit sample, it will take you to this website, the Autodesk website, and you can download that file and then use it with me together in this workshop.
And we are going to also share this PDF, so you can go to this link in the PDF, right?
Exactly. Yeah, because this, if you don't copy paste, it's impossible to get to this website otherwise. Right. So, sorry. First things first. What will be like the difference between a BIM element and a CAD element? Revit is BIM. AutoCAD. Rhino is CAD. The difference here is like you can think about CAD as if you have like it's a program for geometry management. So mostly you're gonna be dealing with geometry, right? This geometry in general is damp, which means that a wall in Revit has like so many different properties. It's not just geometry; it's much more things. But the same wall in Rhino, instead of just a wall, might be a solid, right? A piece of geometry that is damp. It doesn't really have that much information in it. Maybe if you can let me share my screen, I can solve this a little bit more graphically.
So yeah, we can see your screen right now.
Yes. So let's see, now I have Rhino inside. Well, if in case you don't know, if it's the first time that you use Rhino inside, to activate it, if you have it installed, you have to go to the tab that is called, it's here at the top that it says Rhino inside, and then you will have this button to start Rhino. So if you click on it, it's gonna activate Rhino, and then from Rhino you can open Grasshopper as you usually do, and then you have linked Rhino Grasshopper with Revit. So what I was talking about, if let's say, for example, a wall, this wall, right? I'm gonna select this wall. And then when you go here to the properties tab, you can see how the wall has like so much information, right? It has a location line, a constraint, offset, room bounding, you know, it's structural, it's not structural. You can actually have IFC parameters. Was it creating a specific phase? You can edit the different types, right? So the different section of the wall, depending on the type of wall that you want to use. So this element is like, we can say that it's a smart element, right? Because it has like so much information inside. Now, if you go into Rhino, the same wall, I'm not going to extract the wall right now, but let's say that we can create a box like this. This will be our wall, right? And basically our wall is a little bit dumb, right? All that information that we had in the Revit wall is quite different as the information that we have in Revit. So we have to take this into consideration when you want to extract information from Revit into Rhino, and when you want to pass information from Rhino to Revit, because you know the software is very different. One is BIM, one is CAD. So there are like two walls that can talk to each other, but they are different walls.
Yeah, and just for information, there are some plugins that can extend possibilities of Rhino, and you can also create BIM elements inside Rhino and add all attributes. But yeah, but for the sake, we are not using any plugins and just pure objects.
Exactly. And one thing that you can do in Rhino directly, if you want to add attributes or some information into any geometry element, if you go here where it says in the property tab, you have this object here that it says attribute user text, and here you can start adding if you want information inside, right? So if you want to have, like, for example, material, you can create a value that is concrete, for example. So you could, and you can do this with Grasshopper as well and automate it. So you could extract information in theory from Revit, a specific wall, and you can extract all these attributes using Grasshopper, and you can put them inside this wall. So at the end, you will have like a wall in Rhino that it will behave, or at least the metadata that it will have, it wouldn't be as dumb. So it will have all that information inside the wall, right? So that's actually possible. So I think that's good enough for the introduction. If you can go back to the presentation so we can see what's the next step. Right. So the next step will be using, we're going to start using Rhino inside to start querying some information from the Revit file. So just one sec. You can use this as a cheat sheet. You see here how I've put it together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different components. These components are here, are Rhino inside components. They let you query information from Revit. It's important to think about Revit as a database. Revit is a complex database with like different type of information inside. And you can think, this is the way I think about Grasshopper and Rhino inside when I'm working together with Revit, is I'm extracting information from that database that is Revit, okay? We're gonna take a look at these different 5 elements and what do they do, these components here. So we have the query families, query types, query categories, query materials, and query worksets.
They are very similar, so we have to pay attention what is the real name.
Exactly. So I'm here, I mean, just remember that every time you want to extract something from Revit using Rhino inside, remember the word query, because almost all these components have like the query at the beginning. So if you write down query in Grasshopper, then all of these components are going to pop up. If you are starting with Rhino inside, my recommendation, and if you're starting with Grasshopper, and even if you're not starting that much, when I was at the beginning of my career, I had like this thing that I called my Grasshopper diary. So every time I learned like a new connection, a new component, or a new little, script or logic, I used to like copy paste, put some notes, print it, and put it in the notebook. So I had like a physical notebook with all, these cheat sheets that I actually used at the beginning. Now I know them all by heart, so I don't need to do it anymore. But when you start, it's something actually very useful. So if you're starting with Rhino inside, creating like snippets of screenshots like this one might be very helpful.
It's really cool. Good recommendation, because there are lots of different components, and it's really hard at the start to learn all of them, especially they are really similar. And yeah, it will be cool to see this notebook one day.
Yeah, I have it in my parents' house, but yeah, one day I will ask them to send it to Bahamas. But yeah, that's useful, especially at the beginning, because suddenly your brain starts to understand patterns and how the script works, and it's like when you click, right? It clicks, but you can forget easily, right? Especially if you're not using it all the time. So I think it's good to have like a place where you take these notes, graphical notes, and save them so that you can go back if you ever, don't remember what you did at specific time. Cool. So let's go to, if you can go back to my screen, and we can take a look at how this component works. So once that I'm in Rhino, I'm going to open Grasshopper. So let's start with the query. What was the first one? I think it was query
family, I think.
Query families, yes. Right. So if you write down query, then you will see query families. If you're inside Rhino inside, you will have the plugin by default, the Rhino inside plugin. So let's go with query families. I'm gonna just open it up completely now, because we don't really need to see the Revit file. This component is inside Revit, so you can see where it is inside Revit, and then you go to type, and we have it here, query families. How this component works is you can specify some parameters, like if you want to match a specific kind of family, a specific category.
Can you just change the display mode so we can also see the input's name? If you go to display,
oh yeah,
sure. Full.
Where is it? Draw full names here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, here you have the kind that you want to match, the category. If you want to extract a family from a specific category, you can fit the category inside. You can use a filter. Filters are very useful when you want to extract something specifically from Revit, so that you can think about Revit as a database again. Databases, how they work is to be efficient, you can just know exactly what you're looking for, so you don't have to iterate through all the data. So they're actually more fast. So the filter input works a little bit like that. If you know exactly what you're looking for, you can just go for it using filters, for example. So the process is going to be much faster. So in this case, let's take a look at what's coming out of it. I'm going to first put a panel here. So these are all the families that exist in the Revit file, right? So all these families here, text label, stairs, detail view, elevation, blah, 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 all these are the families that exist in the Revit file. And you might want to use them because you want to retrieve a specific family with some information or some geometry. Then you can just look for the specific family that you're looking for. If you go into parameters, and this one is this is important to extract something specific. Let's say that you know which family do you want to extract, and you want to do it like manually, because for your workflow or for whatever you're doing is the way it's like, okay, I know I'm looking exactly for this family, how can I get it? If you go in the parameters section in Rhino, this is actually the value picker is Rhino inside component as well. So you will see like this component here. If you click on it, you will get this panel, right? The value picker will show this panel. And the cool thing about this component is that when you plug something in, like a list, it's going to let you specify which one do you want to select manually. So
Yeah.
if you
Previously Isma just used panel, and in the panel you cannot you do not have this option, but in the picker, so you can click on the elements and select them.
Exactly, yes. So the panel basically what it's doing is you cannot click here, and it's converting the families into text. So if you have a workflow where you want to see what's here and then you just keep going, it's not going to work, because then this, whatever is coming out of the panel is text. Here we're getting like a family object, which has like a lot of information. This is not just text. It's like a Revit family. So basically you're selecting a Revit family. And as I was saying before, that Revit family has like a lot of information inside. It's like if you know programming, it's like an object. So it's like a, you know, C#, for example, object. It's not just text. So just, yeah, bear in mind that if you connect something into a panel, what you're doing is that you're transforming that information into text. So now whatever is coming out of this panel is text. Oops. Okay, so this will be for the query families. Let's do now query categories, and then I'm gonna show you later how can we use the query categories. No, we have query types, right? Query types. I'm gonna show you later how can we use some of these components, for example, in a specific workflow, so that they don't work just in isolation. The query types is similar to the families, but instead of families, you have types. You have to be familiar with Revit to know, okay, what's the difference between a type, a family, and a category. I'm not a Revit expert, but these are like basic things that you have to learn when you're working with Revit. So with query types, the same. If you're looking for a specific type, you can extract it from the query types component, and you can connect as well like the value picker component here, and you could extract whatever you're looking for here, right? So here, basically, you have the list of all the types existing in the Revit file. The next one was query categories. This one is quite important. The categories are like the main groups of elements in Revit. So let's take a look at what's coming inside. As you can see, like the way they work, they are very similar, right? You have like kind, category, family name, and filter. Here, you have also family name and type name. This is because the types can be like a subcategory of a family. You can have a family, for example, a specific wall that you created. It could be like a family, and then inside that family, you can create like different types, like different versions of the same of the door, for example. And then that's why it's going to specify first, okay, what's the family name, and then from that family, what is the type name? It's like subclasses inside Revit. Categories, I will call it's like the well, categories I think is a good name, but it's like the main groups of Revit elements. So for example, walls will be here, curtain panels, you see doors are here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right, the pipes, floors, ceilings. If you're into a mechanical engineer, MEP equipment, parts, structural elements, right? These are the categories. So if you're looking for example, if you want to extract all the walls in a Revit file, you can come here, look for walls, select, and then this is going to select the wall category. So once we have the wall category, we can take here, then we can use this information to get all the walls from Revit and put it into Rhino, right? I'm going to show you how to do that in the next step. So this one is important. And then here you have a little bit more of information. So for example, you have each subcategory. So if it's a subcategory, true or false, then it will filter that information. And then we had query materials. Query materials. Right? Same thing. Here you have material class, name, and filter. Same. If you want to filter by material or by a specific filter, you can use them. Same. I'm going to show you after this how to use the filters. and then you will have like a list of all the Revit materials. You could use this to create an object with a specific material and put it into Revit, right?
And if we are adding new material or new family, so it's going to be updated automatically, or we have to open Grasshopper again?
Yeah, basically, there's one thing when you create an object with Rhino inside. Let's say you create a new material. I think, and it's the same with geometry. I'm not 100% sure, but I think Rhino, it creates like a live link, Rhino inside with Revit. So if, for example, you create like a geometry, a direct shape, like you have a piece of geometry, you put it into Revit with Rhino inside, it creates a connection with the Revit file and the Rhino and the Grasshopper script. But if you close, and if you reopen the file, it's like it's not baked inside the document. So if you want to just lose that connection, the good practice is like to bake. There's like a bottom, I think it's called release, which is this one, release element. I would say this is a different conversation because this is more like bringing data into Revit. But if you use the release element, then basically it's like you're baking that information into Revit and then it exists there. And the next time you open if you do this with a material, for example, the next time you open or reload the Grasshopper file, you make sure that that information is already living in the Revit database and it's not like a temporary link, because when you create these temporary links, in my experience, it could be very finicky, and then you can start to have like so many different problems. When I do workflows, I prefer to do steps A to B and then B to C. I don't like to have like AB, BA, AB, BA, because this type of connections sometimes, quite often they can give you some problems.
Okay, so let's focus now for the workflow between Rhino from Revit to Rhino.
Exactly. So with this one, you will be able to get like all the materials in the Revit file, and for example, another one is query work sets. So with this one, work sets are like groups that you can create for like to introduce like specific geometry or Revit types or categories inside Revit. It's like basically different work groups that you can create to like isolate groups of information in Revit. So if you want to specify a specific work set, because maybe imagine that you're working on I don't know, let's say you're working on a facade for a specific building, and that facade, for any reason you want to do that, you have put that facade into a work set, specific work set, and you hide it. And you don't want to get information from that hidden facade because you don't want to get any information from that specific work set using Rhino inside. You could use this one for that, right? It's basically like another layer of complexity that you can add into the workflow. Okay, so this is how the components work. They are very easy. You just put them inside the component in the canvas, Grasshopper canvas, and then they work, right? They are automatically loaded. One thing that you have to take into consideration is that these components, when you run Grasshopper, are going to extract information from the Revit file that you have open. So if you have, let's say you're working with two different Revit files, if you open the second file, then you will have to come to Grasshopper, and then you will have to like regenerate the component, right? Recompute, so that it can read from the Revit file that it's open, right? It's always linked to the Revit file that it's open. If you want to get information from a specific file, like for example, you have two different Revit files, or you have one linked model, you have one model with another linked Revit file, which I'm going to show you later. There's like a
magic hidden button.
Exactly. If you zoom in, right, just zoom in, you will see this plus. If you click in plus, it's going to say, okay, so you want to extract the work sets from which document? And then if you fit the document here, this is going to extract information from the specific document that you are feeding. I'm going to show you in like a couple of minutes how to do this, but just take a look here. You see this document is all over the Revit components. Okay, so the Rhino inside components. So every time you want to extract something from a specific document, just remember that you can zoom in and specify from which document do you want to extract the information and feed it there. Yeah. Okay, can we go back to the presentation?
Yes, so we can see your presentation now. So let's go to next topic.
So the next one will be querying one element. Okay, so here what I'm gonna do is, okay, now you have your Revit file and you know that you want to extract just one element. It's like, okay, I want this specific element. You can do that as well. There's like a specific way to do this. And then once we have this element, we're gonna analyze it. So I'm just gonna inspect the element so you can take a look at how can you extract, if you want to extract something specific of the element, like the material or the geometry or like a specific parameter, how can you do that? Okay. So let's go back to the Rhino screen. So I'm gonna use this wall here. So the first thing that you have to do is you select the element that you want to extract. So I'm clicking on this wall. And then in Revit, you go to Manage. Right, this is my Revit panel, Manage. And there's a group that is called Inquiry. And it has this, this button that says IDs of selection, right? So inside Inquiry, IDs of selection. You can click, and then it's gonna give you the ID of that specific element. So this is one way that you can do this. You extract the ID. So basically, I'm gonna just copy. Control C. I'm copying the ID of the wall. Okay, and now remember it's here, right? Inquiry, IDs of selection. Now I can go back to my Rhino, Grasshopper. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a panel, and then I'm gonna paste the ID. So we have the ID here, right? This is my ID, the ID for the wall. Now there's a component that is called query element, right? So remember that you always have query when you want to get something. So in this case, query element, not query elements, query element. And the description is get element by ID. So you feed the ID here, click. And then you see, well, you have Revit wall, SIP 202 mml wall, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
okay.
We cannot see nothing because first it's just an element. It's a name of element, right?
Exactly. So this is the element, right? So as Chris is saying, the element has a lot of information. Some of the information that we have is the geometry. So if you want to get the geometry, I'm just gonna get here a little bit aside. There's one component that is called element geometry here. So element geometry, you can fit the element into the geometry, and now you can see how the wall is here. Yeah.
And about the coordinates, is it placing in the same coordinates as we have in Revit file?
Yeah, exactly. It's using I think it's using the origin point, because Revit files, to be honest, I'm not really sure exactly how they work. They have like 3 different type of coordinates, like origin, internal, and survey. No, they have like 4, no? 3 or 4 different type of coordinates. So
yeah,
I think
it's always an issue with Revit about exporting the right coordinates.
And then you have like rotations as well. You can write, sometimes it's not just the location that it's involved. This one is using by default, I think it's the origin point. So yeah, it's like the 000, I think. So this is in the right place according to the 000 in the, I think it's the origin point in Revit. Yeah. So with this, you're able to extract the geometry, right? So here we have the element. Here we are getting the geometry out of the element. The next one will be the parameters. So what if you want to get parameters from this? There are like different ways. One is called element parameter. So if you use element parameter, basically you are going to get set access to element parameters. Let's see what that means. That means that you have to specify the specific parameter that you're looking for. which in this case is not what I want to show you. But here is, if you know exactly the parameter that you're looking for, you can just feed it here. And if you want to update the value, you can feed also value here, and you will update the parameter inside Revit. But this is Rhino to Revit, and I'm not interested today about Rhino to Revit. It's more Revit to Rhino. So there's one that is called inspect element. Here, this one. This component, inspect element. You can feed it here. And then it looks like nothing is happening. But if you right click in the component, it's going to tell you show common parameters, show all parameters. So you can click on these two. And then this is going to open like all the parameters from the wall, right? So here you're going to be able to extract the parameters from specific parameters from the wall. And then I think there was another one. Let me see if I left it here. Yeah, and then we have element parameters. Query element parameters. Query element parameters. Get the parameters of the specified elements. This is a different way. And here what we're getting is a list. Yeah. So here we are getting the parameters like as the component, and here is as a list. So here we get 61 different parameters, and the same thing, right? If you want to specify like if you want to get like a specific parameter, you can use
it's just another method of querying this information. And I really like, because sometimes you don't know what exactly is the name of this attribute. Sometimes you can make a typo with the big small letter, with the underscore, without underscore. So I prefer also to list it out and then select it.
Exactly. So that will be another way. And then if you want to extract, for example, the material of the element, you have the element materials. If you feed it, then it's going to give you like a list of all the materials that are being used in the specific element that you're extracting, right? So these are ways to extract information from all these elements in Revit. Because yeah, as I was saying at the beginning, right, these elements are complex. They are not just geometry, that they have like so much information inside. So it's interesting to know how can you extract that information for your own workflow, right? And then you can create your own your own workflows to do whatever is actually necessary to make your work more efficient and more fun. So, and the next one will be element curve. So element curve, it works for like some type of objects, for example, walls, right? Walls, usually in Revit, there are like different ways of creating the walls. And if you create the wall through like a 2D element as a curve or a line, you can extract that specific element using Rhino inside as well, right? So element curve, and then you see how I'm getting the curve that Revit is using to develop that specific wall. And again, this will be useful or not. It depends on your workflow, but just for you to let you know, I mean, I just wanted to let you know that it's possible to extract that information as well, right? And then what else? Now, if you want to get that information inside Rhino, you have the wall, you want to put it into Rhino. There are a couple of ways to do that. When you extract this, so I'm going to just hide, I'm going to take out this. Okay, so we don't have the geometry, we don't see anything. We have the element here that we can actually see. Because here we are in this element, we are containing everything, not just the geometry. If you bake directly from here, and then let me go to layer so you can see what's going to happen. Okay. So you see that my layer is by default, I don't really have any layer, right? Only the default layer, it's empty. If you bake directly the element, right? So we are by ID, we are querying the element. Now we have the element, bake. This is going to create a block with the information that you're baking. So in this case, I have the geometry inside the block, and then it's creating a structure of layers that is used in Revit, model, and walls, right? Because this is a wall, so, and this is coming from the 3D model from Revit. So by default, Rhino is gonna create this Rhino inside. So if you like this structure and you wanna work with blocks, this is a very, very simple way of getting information from Revit into Rhino. But I'm gonna show you how can you do that as well, more like customized, right? So if you want to create your own workflow, then you can do it. I have my own that is a little bit more complex than this. It actually, I have like a toggle that selects, you can select elements that are hidden or not. You can select from specific work sets or not, from design options or not. And then it filters both by material or by type. So that sometimes if I just want to do it by material, which is a little bit complicated because as you see, an element like this might contain multiple materials. But the cool thing is that I can bake a full model of Revit with all the materials, and then I can send this to the visualizers, for example. Because the visualizers, they don't really care if, you know, the specific type of a wall or of a window. They care about the material. So yeah, this workflow actually that I have is quite handy, especially for our own models that we actually know how they work with our own families, our own categories, etc. So yeah, this will be how will we create, extract a specific element of geometry from Revit into Rhino. If you wanna, let's say that you wanna extract more information, not just this one. So I wanna get this wall, and I wanna get this roof, and I wanna get also like this piece of, I don't know what I selected here, but let's say, right, I'm gonna select some elements here. You can select multiple elements, and then the process will be the same. You select the elements in Revit, which, by the way, you have to hold Control. If you press Control, you can click in different elements and select them all at the same time in Revit. Go to Manage again. Inside Inquiry, we have now IDs of selection again. Now, instead of one, it's going to give us the IDs of all the elements that we have selected before. So we copy this exactly the same as before, Control C. Now you come here into Grasshopper, create a panel, and paste it. Now, if you come here now and go to the query element component and you fit this, it's not going to give you anything in return, because what we're doing here is we're just feeding like a string of text. This is just pure text.
Just a one, only one string.
Exactly. It's just one entry, and there's no an ID that has like all these numbers with all these commas. So what we have to do is we have to convert this string into a list. We can do this using the text split component. So just write down text split. Now this is going to ask for a text. So we feed the text and then the separator. Yeah, in our case, the separator is a comma because we want to separate each one of these IDs by commas. So we create a panel with a comma, feed the separator, and now this is one of the most basic and useful Grasshopper components. It creates a list, right, out of the text string that we had from Revit. And if we fit this here, now it's working, right? We have the seven elements that we have selected here. So we can come back to Rhino. Yeah, you see how these components are here. If I bake them, you see they even get the color of the roof and everything, which is nice. And you see how this is inside roofs, and the right roofs, I have this, and this is inside walls. So basically it's grouping everything by categories. Yeah, roofs, walls.
So it's really smart. It's not the dump just baking. It's really taking the information. We had some questions about the element curve node. Is that working with the columns and framing?
I I think you can extract that information from columns as well. And framings, I haven't tried, but I think you can basically you can extract all the information that exists in Revit. You can extract it using Rhino inside. If there's not a component to do that, which they actually have created like so many components in Rhino inside that most likely there's one to do that. You can always create a Python script if you know how to program and access the Revit API and then get whatever you need. Because at the end of the day, as I was saying, all these objects are, well, they're like objects and they behave as they're like code, right? So you can extract the information from the different elements in Revit. So I would say
Chandra just wrote that element geometry won't work for steel connections at the moment. So for example, steel connections are not possible. But what about the families? Is it possible to find in-place families? You already showed that.
You can do that as well. Yeah. It depends. You want to find them by you want to find like the family, the specific family in place. Using, for example, with the ID, you can do that. If you select the element and you have the ID, you can get like a specific family that you're looking for.
And did you have any problems with interoperability between Rhino and Revit about families, about querying information about families?
No.
Would work really good for the families for the querying geometry and in information.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with families. Not that I can recall at the moment. Yeah.
Cool. Let's continue.
Okay. So yeah, this will work this way. Now can you go back one sec to the presentation? Yeah, so we've seen querying one element, querying multiple elements, splitting by ID. Then elements from links. Okay, so now if you want to get a specific element from or like something from like a linked file, how do you do that? Let's go back to the Rhino file and the Revit file. So here, as I was saying at the beginning, if you didn't, well, I will say it again. I created a linked Revit model with two walls. So this is this is a linked Revit model, right? So this is a different Revit model. What if I want to get these two walls inside Revit, inside Rhino, sorry, in the proper location and everything? In this case, both files have the same coordinates, so it's not a problem. But if they are like in different locations, you can actually also extract the information, the origin, position, and the internal origin point from like specific files. You can there's a component
and rotation.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And then you can do like the transformation. But this, if you don't, I mean, you should set up properly your Revit files when you're working with multiple files to make sure that you don't have many problems with that, because it could get very annoying if you don't do it properly for the people working with your files. So for the links, we're gonna use a component that is also query. It's called query Revit links, and it's inside document Revit document query Revit links. Yeah. So if you go into Revit document, there's a query Revit links. And this how this component works is once you load it, it's gonna get the documents linked into the open Revit file. So in this case, you see how I have link learn grasshopper.revit. This is this file here. You see the name to the right, link learn grasshopper Revit is here, right? So what you do is, okay, first you get the documents that are linked into your Revit file. Now I select the file that I want to extract the information from. So in this case, we select the link learn grasshopper Revit. This is going to give us the document. So now what we want to do is, okay, I want to extract all the walls from the linked Revit file. We will create the component that I showed you before, query categories. And with the magic button, it's going to open it's going to add the document input. So we have the document object of the linked file, and then we feed it inside the query categories. Now, this is going to let us select the categories inside that Revit file, the linked one. So in my case, I'm looking for walls, right? So I'm gonna click on walls. And then here I have the Revit category walls. Next step is creating a category filter. So I was saying before, right, would you have here in Revit, let me open it a little bit more. In Rhino Insight, sorry, you have a filter category with like so many different filters that you can use, right? I mean, I'm not gonna talk about all of them. I'm just talking about the simple ones. So in this case, I'm using the category filter, but you have like so many different ones and you can actually add rules if you wanna something that is equal to or greater than, right? You know how this works. Intersections, bounding boxes, etc. So when I fit the category inside the category filter, what this is gonna do is it's gonna select everything inside that category. Yeah. So the next step is the query elements. So with the query elements, not query element, query element is the one we use with the ID to select the specific element that we know we want to get. In this case, we want to get elements using a filter. So here, same thing, no? You have to select document. And actually, let me do query elements.
Yeah, we have to pay attention on the endings.
Exactly. You see that you have, well, the limit is also by default 100, which means that if you have more than 100 walls, it's not going to get them. So you can, if you delete this, now there's no limit. So it's going to get all the walls in the document. Filter, what is the filter that we want? Is this one. But now this is not going to work per se. Well, it's actually working, but it's giving me like walls from like the other different document. So you have to come with the document and put it here. And now it's only giving me these two elements from
Linked model, yeah.
link model, yeah. So you have to specify the filter and from which model you're getting the information from. So let's see how this works in Rhino. Yeah, so here we go. And you see that they are in the proper location, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have the walls here. And now same thing, if you just click here, this is gonna get added into walls. So this is interesting. Now, this is how you get information from a linked file into a Revit model, into a Rhino model, sorry. And then the next step that I wanted to show you, maybe I can do it quick, is if you wanna custom make your own workflow, so that instead of getting the information into roofs or into walls, you can get a little bit more of like your own version, right? What do you think? Do we have time? I can do it like in 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I think we still have time. Before that, just one. I think it's a good question from Paula. What type of geometry is being imported into Rhino? I'm having trouble finding a way to make element easy to edit, since most of blocks are from meshes.
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, and to be honest, I think Rhino Insight works quite nice with Revit because I think they are using both. I don't know if it's NURBS or I think it's Revit is using NURBS as same as polysurfaces as Rhino for like typical objects. So if you're doing like typical Revit walls or floors, ceilings, etc., if you get the information, let's say here, right? This is a block. But if you explode the block, what you get is a polysurface, one closed polysurface. And as you can see, the geometry is like super clean.
Mm-hmm.
So that works quite nice. It really depends on the geometry that you get into Revit. If you're getting something in Revit that it's not like our original Revit category, right? That maybe it was imported from a different type of file, from a CAD file, or maybe it was from a Rhino direct shape as mesh. Then when you import it into Rhino with Rhino Insight, it's not going to transform a mesh into a polysurface because Rhino is not going to do that. But
yeah, I have the same experience. If you're using simple elements, it's giving a really great BRUPs. And remember, Paula, that you don't have to explode these blocks. You can use some components from Grasshopper that inside Grasshopper, you can use that, explode it inside Grasshopper, not physically in Rhino, and then use it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so now let's make our own little workflow. So let's see. I think I'm gonna share this script with you guys later on, but now it's
everyone who registered. So Ismael is going to share this script and PDF. So no worries.
Okay, let's do it with category filter. So we have the walls, elements. Okay, let's say, for example, here, yeah. Let's say that we have these elements, for example, here, right? The two walls that we were using for from the linked files. Now, if instead of, I'm gonna use, you can do this with, we were having a conversation about this later, Chris and I. I'm gonna use a plugin that is called Elephant, but you can do this with native components. I think you can use user text and create layers. What's in it? Because I'm not that familiar with the new
Rhino 8. But in Rhino 8, but it's in a Rhino 8 is tab called Rhino.
Yeah, Rhino. Yeah. I think I might have it here now.
Do you have yeah.
I think it's this, no? Query model it was.
Yeah, but you can show it in the Elephant. It's like similar way of using.
Yeah, so this is one of the plugins that I like the most. I learned how to use it properly when I was working in Arup Hong Kong with the creator of the plugin, and it's super powerful. I think there's like some things that still like the native components cannot do. For baking, yeah, I think it's almost the same. So basically, what I'm gonna do is we are going to extract information from the walls. We are gonna extract the name type. So instead of baking the information inside a block and then inside that block into a layer that is called Revit model walls, I'm gonna do it by type. So by type is a little bit more specific. And this is just an example to show you that you could create like a group that is called Revit, then inside it could be called walls, and then inside you can have like the specific type of wall or like the specific material. So here I'm using this component, it's called element type. So let's do it together. If you write element type, click on it, element, this is gonna give you a type. And in this, and we have two different types. So let's do it, let's craft it so that it goes in parallel and we don't mix information. So let's just take a look at what's going inside. Well, I don't know if you guys use this, the data viewer. I use it all the time.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
Data viewer. And then you click this button. Every time you click inside anything in Grasshopper, you can see what's inside. So it's very, very useful. I use it a lot. So here we can see that we have like an element. This is the element, right, of this. And this is the type. Revit host tab, basic wall. So I want to get the name of this type. Sorry, element name. So you can use element name to get the names out of everything that's coming out of this Grasshopper Revit components. And now we have, this is the name of the wall, which is not very nice, but this is the name of the wall, right? The type. So what we can do here is we can now extract the geometry of the element. So we have the geometry and we have the name. And we could create a layer. So I'm going to create a, well, with Elephants, how you do it is you create Elephant attributes. Let me do it properly. Elephant attributes. And then with the attributes, you can insert information into the element. You can add a name to the element and you can add a specific layer, for example. If the layer exists, then it's using the existing layer. In our case now, the layer doesn't exist. So we're going to use this as the layer name. So we can just fit it here. for now, I'm just going to do it more simple, but you could specify also the color of the layer as well in like using a different component. And then we have the geometry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the bake objects, which is an elephant component for baking. So here we want to have the geometry and the layer as attributes. Sorry, the attributes here, because they are going to bring everything inside these elephant attributes. And when you bake this, I'm just going to delete here, instead of baking a block, now you're baking just the geometry directly inside this layer.
Mm-hmm.
You could extract also like the element type. You could extract, for example, the element category and create like a nested layer, right? So you can do element category, extract the name, create nested layers. And then with this, you will be able to, extract all the elements in Revit by Revit type. Also, the cool thing about the attributes is that if you extract all the elements, like as I showed you before, you can actually use the parameters. You can get the name of the parameter and the value of the parameter, create the key value pair, and put it into the geometry. And then you will be able to get all the information from Revit into every specific element. And one more thing that you could do is you could create the unique ID for each element. So every time you update the geometry from the Revit model, you wouldn't be baking on top of the geometry, but you will get like an updated Rhino model out of the Revit model. But I will say that it's a little bit more advanced. Yeah, sorry. I think that's that covers mostly everything I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. We have some questions, so let's go to. There's some questions about families. Let me see. We have some Maxim. He really asked interesting question. Thanks for presentation. Does the query families component work with all types of families or only with system families? I have a crazy idea of connecting families of reinforcement structure based on the IFC rebar to Grasshopper. That will be cool, but I'm not sure. Do you have any experience with different types of families?
I think you can create your own family. I've created my own families, and yeah, I think you can get them. I mean, once they are in the Revit database, you can get access to them.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I think I've done it before. So should be
Cool.
possible to do that. Yeah. I'm not an expert when it comes to structures because I'm more focused in the architectural part. But yeah, I think you could. I don't see why you couldn't get information from a type of family that is not a system family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
And Nandit, can you please shed some light on getting geometry from linked Revit files? We have Ismael already showed that, how to get that, to expand the query component and add a document. But Chandra asking, when we try to get elements from a linked file with a specific shared coordinates and bake them in Rhino, the position does not match that in a Revit document. Do you have the same experience with that problem? It's not about that, as you said, that you have to also take from this linked document, take the specific transformation data about coordinates and rotation.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. If you get I don't remember what's the name of the component right now. I think it's document. I don't know if it's it's not location, but or active document. There's like a component that you can use with Rhino inside. Let me see if I can find it. Where you can use it to extract the different the different coordinates from any file. So you can use those to, if they are different, to like relocate the position of the geometry to match one or another.
Yeah.
Oh, I think, let me see. I think I have it here. 1 second. I have a script specifically for that. It's called
So
project location.
Mhm.
So you can. Am I sharing screen or yeah?
Yeah, you're sharing screen. Yeah.
So what you can do is this is called project location. So with this component, it's gonna ask you from which project you want to extract information. So you will have to use the open file and the linked file. And then here you have, well, site location. I think, oh, here it doesn't show. No. So you have site location, search site, survey point, project-based point, internal origin. Because I think that depending on the relationship between these two files, you might have to use one over the other one. But basically using this information, in most cases, if there's like a correlation in between the two files, you are going to be able to do some geometrical operation to put them in place.
Yeah. We have some following about this question because this is the main daily issue while working with multidisciplinary teams.
Yeah.
When you have linked models and they are in Revit, they are looked like in the same coordinates, but they are not.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very annoying. I mean, it happened to me as well. We have a couple of projects that we have like the structural model is in one place, the architectural is in another one. Inside the architectural model, we have it's like one parcel with like 3 different buildings, and then each building is in a different position. One has like a different rotation, and it's like, oof, that gets like super, super annoying. But I mean, a workaround is you could try to use this. Especially if you know that already like the coordinates are like settled, right, for the different files, then you can have like a little script that is actually doing a little bit of a geometrical grasshopper magic for that.
Some question if the session is recorded. Yes, the session is recorded, and we are going to showed PDF and the Grasshopper and file. Maybe we forgot to explain at the start why do we need to extract data from Revit into Rhino. Why it's not necessary? Because you showed to us great workflows how we can this information, but there's a good question why, how you at your workflows at your work manipulating data in Rhino. What is the value of taking this information into Rhino? Because we have this information in Revit. What are your best example use cases of using Rhino inside Revit for this type of querying information?
Yeah, I mean, there are like so many different scenarios that you can apply this to. I'm gonna just talk about one that it's very common for us. So let's say we have, I'm in architecture, right? So we do a lot of like renders, visualizations, so that they look, cool to sell our projects, so that the clients get excited, and so that we can sell our product better. When we're working with Revit, sometimes we actually are working with Revit and we're working with Rhino together. But in many cases, we have our final product, or at least what we have to deliver to the client, is the Revit file, not the Rhino file. But when we're working with visualizers, we prefer to send them Rhino files that are a little bit more simple, have less information. They don't need everything from the Revit file. And sometimes some specific things, we just model directly in Rhino because it's faster, it looks better. And then we send it to the visualizers a Rhino file, for example. These Rhino files, they need to have materials, and they don't need to have like 100,000 different type of materials or type of elements. They just need to be like, simple enough so that it's easy for the visualizers to update their models and to create visuals. So sometimes what we have is like we have a specific workflow that we open a Revit file with Rhino inside, we extract the information that we need, and we create a new Rhino file with materials per element. Now, every time there's a change in the Rhino file, right, what we do is with this workflow, we can just reload it, and then we get updated information of only the elements that have changed. So we can pass to the visualizers only the elements that have changed, and we can do this by tracking the unique ID of the different objects in Revit. So this is one of the reasons why you could use that information that Revit gives you to have like models that are updated and are live. That would be like one option, for example, that I can think about in our specific workflows. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on what's the workflow. If you're a structural engineer, maybe you're gonna use like IDs as well to track different elements in your in your models through Grasshopper. I don't know if you're using ETABS or if you're using GSA or whatever you're using. So using the parameters from Revit, they're always useful to get like a link of information that doesn't get lost in translation. It's important to understand what's your specific workflow, right? Because depending on how are you using Rhino, how do you want to use Revit and Rhino together, right? Or maybe you're not even using Rhino, you just want to use Grasshopper. So you have to think about, okay, how can I leverage the information that Revit is giving me, and how can I use it through Grasshopper so that my own workflow or the workflow for my work makes more sense. So I would say it's like there are like so many different variations and so many different applications of using the information that Revit gives you together with Grasshopper. Because the way I see it is Grasshopper is basically it's like a great connector, and you can use Grasshopper to connect with so many different applications. In this case, Revit, you can use Grasshopper to connect with, if you're a structural engineer, maybe you want to connect with Tekla, or you want to connect it with ETABS, right? Or I don't really know. But to me, it's one of the cool things about using Grasshopper.
Yeah, and what about Dynamo? What is your experience with that? Have you used that for similar workflows, or are you using for different parts, different workflows? What is your experience?
I mean, I know how to use Dynamo. I don't use it that much, to be honest. For the type of work that I'm doing right now, I don't use it. When I was working before in Arup, mostly with engineers, it was the type of work that we were doing. To be honest, even Rhino Inside and Grasshopper was much more powerful than Dynamo. So I think it's good to, of course, to learn it and to understand what's good, what's worse, why is better Grasshopper, why is better Dynamo. But I actually feel more comfortable with Grasshopper than with Dynamo. I think it's much more powerful. It gives you much more resources. I like that you can, with the access to the API and with all these components that we get from Rhino Inside, you can really control, Revit like a puppet using Grasshopper, which is very cool. So yeah, I don't know. In my case, it really depends, right? If you're like a Revit user only in Revit, maybe it doesn't make sense to learn Grasshopper. But I think Grasshopper is like so much powerful than Dynamo in general that if you actually can choose, I will always go for Grasshopper.
Yeah, that's a really well said. For those who are interested in learning Grasshopper inside Revit, me and Jungfu, we have prepared a document where you have step-by-step full guide how to start using Grasshopper in Revit. If you have experience with Dynamo, as Ismael said, it's a similar language, visual language, so you can understand the concept of it. So please go to grasshopperinrevit.com, join our community that we are building. And yeah, you can just, if you find Dynamo slow and if you would like to learn new workflows, so we would like to welcome. Okay, we have still 5 minutes, so it will be last questions, and that will be end of the session. Just question. So you said that you are working mostly with Revit and Rhino. How many Grasshopper users do you have at your company?
We're not that many. We're like around 6, more or less. It's not a big company. We're like, in general, we are like, how many? Maybe 40 designers, and I would say 6, 7 able to use Grasshopper. Yeah. We have a question from Luis here.
Yeah, we can just put it. How limited do you feel using Rhino inside Revit? How often do you require Python, C# scripting for your routines?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Rhino inside this Revit is quite, as I was saying before, it has like a lot of components. So you cannot do everything, but you can do almost everything using the native components. But the cool thing is that you can actually use Python or C# to access the API and then control Revit, if you actually wanted to do it more programmatically. There was a couple of things that I created using the API. So one was I wanted to create a wall by face. So I didn't find a component in Rhino Inside, and I was talking with Jaffe actually as well, and another guy who's a developer for Rhino Inside about this specifically. but there was at least as far as my understanding is, I think there is still not a component to create like a face by wall by face. So you have a face and you want to create a wall. This is something that you can do with Revit, but you couldn't do it with Rhino inside. So I create my own Python script to do that. So I can feed a surface and then it creates a surface from Rhino and it creates like the wall inside Revit. So yeah, a couple of things here and there might not be there, so you might be able to create them through the API. But in general, I say they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, and they are adding new components every single week or month, and yeah, they are also asking for. If you, Luis, you find Rhino inside Revit Limited, so if you write some queries in the forum, so maybe they will look at. They are really open to developing because they are also looking for showing them direction. And maybe also I'm going to make a workshop about how to create own components, because it's not that hard to create, especially if you all can also use ChatGPT or other AI tools, so you can create your extend possibilities of Rhino inside. Cool. Comment from Honor: is Dynamo better for Revit API datas? I'm not sure. I don't know if it's a question or maybe it's a statement that Dynamo is better. Do you have any knowledge about that?
No idea.
No.
So Revit API data, you mean like extracting data from the API, or what is the specific question?
Yeah, I think it's I think like that. Yeah, but let's not talk about Dynamo. We talk about more fun things, which is Grasshopper. So thank you, Ismael, one more time. For those who still not subscribing, Ismael mailing, I really recommend to find Ismael on LinkedIn and just go to his website and follow. Thank you very much. Thank you for this introduction. And who knows, maybe we should make more advanced things and show more practical examples next time. What do you think?
Sure, sounds fun. Thanks for inviting us. Thanks everybody for being here.
Yeah, thank you for this session. And yeah, if you are going to subscribe to learn Grasshopper, so you are going to get notification about new work webinars and workshop that we are still planning. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.